I recently played a few hours of Star Wars Outlaws, and during my time, I couldn't shake this growing feeling of boredom. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I mean, yeah, it is a typical Ubisoft 7 out of 10 wait for a sale game. But it's still Star Wars, and I love that franchise with a burning passion. I've played most of the games and watched almost all the movies, well, besides the sequel trilogy for obvious reasons. But why am I so disinterested in this open world Star Wars game that I've wanted ever since I was a kid? Is it because I'm playing as this random civilian instead of a Force user? I thought I was onto something with that line of thought, but then I realized I also didn't like the Jedi games made by Respawn Entertainment as well. They were good games, they just didn't particularly grab or hold my attention. But then it hit me, the current Star Wars timeline is just incredibly uninteresting. Hear me out, interesting things are happening in this timeline, such as Andor as well as the Mandalorian show. But the issue is, all of the truly exciting events that could have happened within this 100-year or so timeline, from Episode 1 The Phantom Menace to the Rise of Skywalker, have already been explored in great detail. Everything from the Clone Wars to the Rebellion to balance being supposedly brought to the Force has been explored thoroughly. That's why every single Star Wars game has you fighting the same battle droids and stormtroopers and maybe a Sith Inquisitor if you're lucky over and over again. The current Star Wars timeline has just been milked to death. Think about it, the sequel trilogy's climax is just Palpatine returning. Keep in mind, Palpatine was the villain since Episode 1 and he was killed off in Episode 6 to bring balance to the Force. And he just randomly came back to life in Episode 9 like it's a Saturday morning cartoon. We can all clearly see that the current canon is running out of ideas. And the less said about the piece of irredeemable garbage that is Star Wars acolytes, the better. That's why I say reject modern Star Wars and return to the Old Republic. And yes, I am extremely biased on this. Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 are some of my favorite games of all time. But let me explain why the Old Republic is just objectively better. Because while most of us out there only possess length or girth, the Old Republic possesses both. And by that I mean the timeline is very long and it covers a wide variety of different topics. But with all that being said, I'll start with my first point in favor of the Old Republic. Reason number 1, there are a lot more Jedi and Sith during this era of Star Wars. The Old Republic takes place thousands of years before the Phantom Menace, during a time when both the Jedi Academy and the Sith Academy were coexisting, each trying to wipe the other from existence though. There were also many neutral Force users during this period who didn't participate on either side of the conflict. It was a very nuanced time because many of the Sith during this era were not just evil for the sake of being evil. They followed a code and had discipline, honor, culture, proper teachings, and actual philosophy. It's the perfect setting for creating new characters into the Star Wars universe because the possibilities are endless. And you also don't run the risk of ruining the pre-established canon. It's a win-win. Moving on to reason number 2, we have the Mandalorian Wars. With the popularity of the Mandalorian TV show and just Boba Fett in general, the love for Mandalorians and their culture is at an all-time high. So what if I told you in the Old Republic era there is a massive war between the Mandalorians, the Republic, and the Jedi? And yes, it's just as crazy as it sounds. I'm talking about Jedi going off to war against the Mandalorians and being corrupted by the dark side. There were also Jedi that just switched teams and joined the Mandalorians as well and became Mandalorian soldiers. The entire conflict is widespread and insane. You could easily make 3 movies out of it. And I'm trying very hard not to spoil anything about the war just in case we do get an adaptation in the future. Moving on to reason number 3, we have the Old Republic MMO. There's a lot to say about the Old Republic, like the combat isn't very good, the animations are very stiff, and the graphics are very dated. But I can say with certainty that the Old Republic has a better story than any of the Star Wars movies. And it's not even close. There are 8 different class stories in this game, and each one of them is better than your favorite Star Wars movie. Besides maybe the Jedi Consular story, it's not terrible, it's just not particularly great. I'd say it's just mid. Give it a solid 5 out of 10. If you're a Star Wars fan who hasn't been that deep into the Old Republic, this is probably the best place to start. I would recommend Knights of the Old Republic 1, but it sometimes doesn't run on normal PC, so if it works in your computer, play that. If not, do the Old Republic MMO. And the worst part is, I can't even describe to you why it's so good. The characters are just so well written and the world is just fantastically realized. You just need to play it yourself or watch somebody else play it on YouTube or something. And I'm not kidding, if this video sparked your interest in the Old Republic, go play the MMO or the first Knights game. You won't regret it. It's fantastic. And by fantastic, I just mean story and character-wise. I can't vouch for the game's graphics, performance, or anything else like that. But now it's time for my final reason. It is simply inevitable. We can already tell that Disney's running out of ideas for Star Wars stories. Soon they'll have to give us a time skip forwards or backwards to give us something new to latch onto. And personally, I'm hoping they go backwards, because the Old Republic is just too interesting to just let sit in obscurity. And yeah, I know they'll most likely mess it up and ruin a bunch of my favorite characters from this era, but I just want them to try anyways. I'm not looking for success, I'm just looking for an attempt. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Thank you guys so much for the support on my last video. I also want to give a special shout out to Edspace for correcting me regarding Benny's preferences. Thank you so much for that. And if anybody else notices any mistakes I've made, just let me know in the comments or any areas I might be able to improve on. Just let me know. And one last thing, I'm going to be including a link to some lore videos about the Old Republic in the description of the video. If you're interested in learning more about it and don't mind spoilers, then go ahead and take a look. And again, thank you so much for watching.